Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Mark Speeder. There's a new kind of radical, if you want to call them that, on college campuses today, and they look nothing like we in society have come to expect. Joining me to have a conversation about this and to share about some good news that is possibly turning the cultural tide is Andrea Picciotti-Bayer, our friend from EWTN News, legal analyst, and director of the Conscience Project. Follow her work at conscience-project.org. Andrea, thank you very much for making the time. How are you?
I'm doing great, Marcus. Thanks for having me on.
I'm always joyous to be able to connect with you, and this issue is heartening. I love these new campus radicals. Tell us about them.
Well, I'm really excited to talk about this, mainly because I'm not putting on my lawyer hat, but instead putting on my hat with college-age kids and the struggles that they're experiencing, encountering to be able to live their lives as faithful Catholics in a growing secular environment, especially kids that are at secular schools. But what I noticed, especially with the most recent kind of kerfuffle blow-up at Notre Dame, where a faculty member who's very pro-abortion was announced to be elevated to a chair position, and in collaboration with the bishop of, governing South Bend and alumni, a number of students pushed back. These were people who took both to kind of the media organs at Notre Dame, the main newspaper, the alternative newspaper, but also kind of mass media to say this is an inconsistency between our Catholic identity and mission and this action of the administration. And as we all know, the faculty member has decided not to accept the chair position. And that's a really kind of an amazing thing, because there wasn't, barricading of buildings. There wasn't people, burning the president in effigy, but instead people speaking into truth with love, with kindness, and in the greatest kind of tradition, our Catholic intellectual tradition, and seeing pretty rapid kind of success at doing so.
On public universities, we've seen a concerted effort to stifle and to, frankly, abolish any real expression of First Amendment rights, especially when it comes to conservative values and Christian values. How does that contrapose with what we see in private universities? Because they're not bound by the same expressive speech laws that public universities have.
No, you're right, but the culture does influence and impact the administration. About last year, we were dealing with anti-Semitic violence against Jewish students on both public and private campuses. And that was kind of a thread that ran through, even though there's greater protection for First Amendment speech. There's also protection for religious freedom. And so targeting people because of their religious and ethnic identity was something that the laws prevented state institutions from doing, but also that general principle should guide and govern private universities, many of which receive federal funding, which is a way to hold them accountable, even if they're not state universities directly, but to hold them accountable for these basic protections. But I think it's, the tide is turning, and maybe I'm just an utter optimist, but when I see students themselves speaking up courageously in defense of truth, in defense of freedom, and demanding that they be heard and respected, that shows to me that there's hope. We shouldn't throw in the towel yet on higher education in America, but the battle is going to be really fought by these brave, courageous, well-formed students. And as parents to them, we need to be praying for them, giving them support and backing them up when they do get pushback from their peers as well as from the administrators at their universities.
So one of the things I do want to highlight is that Francesca, your daughter, had an opinion piece that was published on her campus newspaper about precisely exercising her conscience rights. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, Franny is the best. She's my number 6 kid, the first girl. We love her dearly, and she wrote an opinion piece, co-authored in a student newspaper in response to the student activities organization putting a vending machine in the student union with Plan B, which is an emergency contraceptive, and basically the article was saying, female students deserve better than a vending machine, especially when you're facing the anxiety and the possibility of an unexpected pregnancy. That kind of anonymous and contraceptive, potentially even abortifacient mentality is kind of beneath a community that's supposed to be a community of support. They also pointed out that, right next to campus, there is a pro-life pregnancy center, as well as highlighting a wonderful program that was initiated at the Catholic University of America called Project Guadalupe. And that project is there to help pregnant and parenting students to be able to navigate study and, bringing new life into this world or caring for new life. And saying, these are things that the student union, student government, and the university need to be thinking about because women and male students deserve more. They deserve much more. Having said that, this beautiful, very lovely piece that Franny wrote received a lot of pushback and antagonism from her peers. And that was very surprising for her. And she's kind of navigating that, but at the same time using it as an opportunity to kind of evangelize and educate on the sanctity of life and have hard conversations even when they're with someone who's particularly hostile.
You also highlight the story of Luke Schwartz at Brown University.
Yeah, no, Luke's a friend, and his family are dear friends of mine. Luke is a freshman at Brown, as you mentioned, and if people have forgotten, Brown was the site of a terrible shooting, mass shooting on campus that took the lives of 2 students, wounded several. And Luke was near the area of the shooting at the time, and this young, brave Catholic student, instead of running away to safety, which is a totally legitimate thing to do in these contexts, ran towards a classmate who had been shot and brought her to law enforcement and actually accompanied her to the hospital, holding on to her wounds. And it's not just a story of courage, but it's that our pro-life beliefs turn into action. We never know when God is going to give us that opportunity, whether it's to counsel a scared, pregnant young student or to save a classmate. Luke is a humble guy. Blessed be God's got training as a member of Navy ROTC. But he really is a reminder that it's not just in words, it's not just in print, but it's going to be in action that God calls us to defend life and the sanctity of life, especially under kind of crazy, scary, dangerous circumstances.
In all of this, Andrea, it's very clear that the fight is still an uphill battle, but we're seeing some light. We're seeing members like your daughter, we're seeing people like Luke being representations of not just free speech and First Amendment rights and freedom of conscience, but also the exercise of the dignity of life in the womb and life in general.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is our Catholic moment, right? I mean, this is the time in which living out our faith in word, in deed, is one of the greatest gifts that God is giving to us in a world that's very troubled, in a world where many young people in particular are very confused. So I think there's great optimism, but at the same time, we just need to pray for these kids.
Andrea, tremendous joy to reconnect with you as always. And God bless Franny on the great work she did. Thank you for making the time.
Thanks, Marcus.
My guest has been Andrea Picciotti-Bayer. She is legal analyst for EWTN News and director of the Conscience Project. And she's been sharing with us how Honestly, standing up for conservative, natural law, and Christian truths makes you a radical. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.